Hello, good evenings, my dear friends, fellow travelers and photographers. Chris Lee here. Welcome to my travel channels. And today, I'm going to share with you my fifth episode of my travel journey to Peru in South America. Today, in this episode, I'm going to share with you one of the very important highlight of my trips. And you can see from the image here I just shared with you is actually man-made floating islands, right? And live with a very indigenous peoples that was there few hundred years ago. And at the same time, a bit of preview, besides sharing with you these famous floating islands of Europe, I also going to share with you another very important place, considered one of the largest Inca temple that was located along the highway linking between the Puno town and the Cusco city. So please stay tuned for the entire episode because I'm going to share with you a lot of images of these special floating islands. And for those who are first time with me, I would like to highlight to you that exactly where Peru, this beautiful nation, is located. It's actually located in the South America continent, as shown in the map here. And Peru basically is actually located fronting the Pacific Ocean on the central western bank of the South America. And of course, Peru was also border to 5 other nations, as seen here, Ecuador and Colombia on the northern sections. We have Brazil on the east and Bolivia on the southeast, as well as Chile at the southern tips of Peru. And today, in my journey to Peru, this will consider as a fifth stop and also the highest point of my visit of the entire journey. And this town, Puno, is actually located just next to the Lake Titicaca, a very famous lake and highland lake. Is considered the highest freshwater navigable freshwater lakes in the world, and at the same time is also housed a very interesting floating valley or village, right, on the floating islands. So the location of Puno is at an altitude of 3,827 meters. And because at this high altitude, I'm quite certain that if we don't do enough acclimatizations before at this stop, just for example, that in my earlier episode, we stopped at Arequipa, which is 2,000 over meter of sea level. And we try to take advantage of our stop there to acclimatize to our highest altitudes. And when we landed even in Puno itself, it's also advisable not to do too much aggressive exercise, because 3,000 for some of you, actually you will quite certainly will going to have high land sickness or high altitude sickness. And we go a bit further beyond Puno, and this is actually a very interesting place, a temple called Viracocha temples. It's located between the two major towns in southern Peru, the Puno at the south, and then at the northern end is basically the Cusco, the Inca Empire, the once Inca empires. So we go to these interesting Inca rain temples before we go to the Euros floating islands. And therefore you can see the location of this place is exactly shown in this map here. There's a star there and there's an arrow shown that it's more closer to Cusco, further away from Puno. And this is actually the map of the Rekchi village. This Rekchi village is where this Rekchi Viracocha temple ruin is located. And let's go a bit in detail of these important Inca temples. Now, Rekchi is a historical site, right, located along the road between Cusco and Puno in a beautiful valley of about 3,500 meters above sea level, which can be easily noticed when driving past along this highway. Rekchi remains home to artisans, farmers, and small ranchers till today. This Inca ruins is well known as the largest Inca temples ruins, Temple of the Viracocha. Now, the Inca built this temple and the surrounding with quarters and granaries in the 15th centuries. So in other words, it's about 600 years ago. Now, the most prominent structures in the ruin is the Temple of Viracocha, an enormous rectangular two-story roofed structures of about 90 meters long by about 24 meters wide and 18 meters high. Now, with Inca stoneworks cover the first 4 meters on the base forming the foundation, and remaining are adobe or clay works. So, adjoining the temple to the north are the 12 living quarters, and to the east are 152 round granaries in parallel line. Each measures something around 10 meters in diameter, and most of the Inca structure in this reign are enclosed by a 4 kilometer long perimeter wall. All right. And let's go into some of the image. You can see that from this close-up location map as seen in this slide, that you can have 1, 2, and 3, and 1 are referred to the Viracocha temple, and 2 basically is the quarters, and the 3 is a granary section where it's easy to storehouse to store their food stuff. So this is actually the image of the temple sections. You can see that it's although they say it's double-story high, but I think it's quite high. As I mentioned just now, that it have a height of about 24 meter, 18 meter high. So in other words, it's not actually 2-story, because in a modern time, a story is measured about 3 meters. So I would consider it's about 6-story high temple building. And you can see at the lower portion, the darker colors are the stone base, which is about 4 meters in height. Itself, just a stone base is taller than a story high in the modern time. So this is some of the surrounding view capture. You can see the perimeter wall, the long perimeter wall. And the perimeter wall, if I'm not wrong, that is also is about 2 meters on the average in height, and completely built of stoneworks. So you can see this is actually the temple sections. Even though it's about close to 600 years ago, and you still realize that the building structure are still in very good condition. And happen to be in the indigenous people, the Inca people are just passing Quechua, the tribe is named Quechua tribes. It's just passing by. I just take a snapshot and to show exactly, giving you an idea of how high is this temple buildings. So this is the only section that's unique and different from the other, that whereby you not only have a stoneworks at the bottom, but you also have the stonework at the upper portion of the building. It's very, very rare in Inca ruins. More images surrounding this Inca temple. I believe that this is actually the quarters area, and probably there's a roof over it. You can see that the all four sides are surrounded with a small opening at the center for the entry and exit. And this is basically the storehouse that I mentioned, the 10-meter diameter circular storehouse. We have 152 number of them in total, well organized in an orderly manner in parallel to one another. And we also come across these huge round stone-based adobe columns that at this Reki. Reki is actually a small village, as I mentioned just now. And of course, I have turned into a tourist spot, so you can find some souvenir shop. And I found that this entrance to this souvenir shop is very attractive and very interesting. And this is about our experience that when we are traveling between Puno and Cusco, and our coach, or rather the bus, broke down. And it was coincidentally the point where this coach or car bus is broke down is almost at the highest point of the entire journey between these two cities. And we were waited there about 2 hours for a new bus to be delivered in exchange of the breakdown bus that we are on. And we snapshot some images surrounding, and we happen to be lucky enough at the right spot of our breaking down of this our bus. And you can see that actually the point here is more on the midway between Cusco and Puno. And this is actually some of the scenery or countryside scene at the time when we have our 2-hour impromptu break along the journey. And we still can view some of the peaks nearby as is snow caps. As I said that earlier, in this altitude it's very close to 4,000 over meter above sea level. So easily those peaks that we can see in these images are well above 5,000 over meter. So from far you can see that all the mountain peaks are almost snow-capped. Very nice countryside. Okay, now we are coming to the highlight of today of this episode. That we are going to visit this Puno town, which also claimed as the lake resort town of southern Peru. All right, and let's touch a bit on this Puno, this little town, so-called lake resort town. Now, Puno is a city sit at the altitude of 3,827 meters above sea level. It's fairly high. And a Peruvian lake city adjacent to Lake Titicaca. And Lake Titicaca is recognized as the highest freshwater lake in the world, and also the largest in South America continents. And this Puno city was founded in 1668. Puno is a regional trading hub, and the city also been regarded as the Peru folkloric capitals, owing to its traditional festival featuring vibrant music and dancing. While we are walking in the street, pretty near to the central square, or we call it Plaza de Armas, we can still locate some few musicians are playing the local instruments, right? And the landmark of this Indian city include Puno Cathedral and its close proximity to the Isla Flotantes de Euros in Spanish, which is also known as the Euro floating island in English, which is located on the Peruvian side of the Lake Titicaca. Now, I need to highlight a bit, the Lake Titicaca is not solely owned by a single nation. Lake Titicaca are owned by two nations, basically Bolivia at the southern end and the Peru on the northern end. So the northern portion belongs to Peru, and then the southern portion belongs to Bolivia. So, so the location here, you can see from this map here, the Puno is right on the western bank of the Lake Titicaca. And you can see that the Lake Titicaca, the color in blue, are considered, as I said earlier, the largest lake in South America continent. So this is the view of the Puno when we are off the coast on the way to the islands. If you look back, and this actually you can see the city view, or the town Puno city, right, is still on the very hilly regions, and they occupy, of course, the lower portion of these regions, and at the back of it are all high ground. So this is the map of Lake Titicaca, and you can see that the Puno is at the area the red arrow shown, right? It's something like a lagoon in that sense, the shelf away, from the strong wind and tide. Don't underestimate Lake Titicaca. Is quite a big lake, and therefore it also have wave during strong wind. And of course, that the southern portion are belonging to Bolivia. And in this Puno town, of course, you will come across another very important cathedral. We call it Cathedral de Puno. Of course, our main focus of our journey to Puno is not so much on this cathedral, but more on the floating island. But anyway, we spend quite a short duration on this Plaza de Armas, where this cathedral, famous old cathedral, is located. So this says some of the images that taken just on the front section of this cathedral, and some close-up image. You can see that the intricate carving works highly reflect the strong inherence and the heritage of the Spanish Spanish era in this region. So it's also a very, very important historical building in this region. A very leisure town, as claimed as a resort, lake resort, and it's quite nice to stay because of the high altitude. The climate is very, very cooling. Especially during winter season, the weather will drop even below freezing point. So it is something that you have to watch out when you travel to this part of the world. And interestingly, our journey to this place, and we have to get us acclimatized. If not, then the local may provide you with some form of drink, and it's usually made up of leaf. It's not a tea leaf, it's a form of leaf that they call them coca leaf, where you place it and pour in hot water and soak it for some time then before you drinking. And later I come across that this coca is actually the cocaine plant, the leaf of the cocaine plants, and therefore in that leaf itself they have some form of the as you said, cocaine is basically a form of drug. So that when you drink this cocaine coca leaf, the soak in water, that you will ease out some of your symptom or highland sickness that you have, and whereby if you do not take any highland sickness medicine, happen to be traveling in this part of the world. So this is just some of the city view of this Pono town. Well, it's not very populated town, but it's quite fun to walk around. And this is actually the taxi in this Pono town, right? And in some other country, in India and Pakistan, we call them tuk-tuk, right? And it's very beautifully, colorfully painted. And you also find some mobile hawker store. And of course, this is actually a bakery shop, and then I think the shop is too small, so the lady displaying the bread that make from his bakery shops and on displays just in front of the shop. And now is our excitement of the day, the floating islands of Euros in Lake Titicaca. So you can see the image that you can see not only the small ship, not even ship, but then the boats are made of the reeds, but also the entire island are made of the reed, as well as a small hut and the houses that built on top of it. And before we go into the image proper, let's go into some of the information pertaining to this floating island of Europe. Now, Isla Flotantes de Euros is in Spanish, which actually means the floating island of Euro, are the man-made floating islands constructed of totora reed, right? A type of reed that's very, very long and that grow abundantly around the Lake Titicaca by the Euro tribe. Now, this floating island of about 14 number of dams are home of 2,000 Euro tribe. And the reeds are also being used to build the hut, boats, beside forming the platform of these floating islands. Now, these floating islands are part of the Titicaca National Reserve, created in the year 1978 to protect the marsh reed. Now, the Euro people are ancient tribe, has been living on the lake for hundreds of years. They were forced to take up the residence on the floating island when the Inca Empire expanded onto their land during the 15th century. Now, these islands, which are usually anchored to the base of the lakes, but can be moved if necessary. Now, as reeds disintegrates from the bottom of the islands, new layer of reeds are added onto it to form the tops. So you keep adding and topping up as the bottom portion are rotten. The thickness of these floating reed mixed platforms are usually between 1.2 meter to 2.4 meter in thickness. When walking on it, you can feel the soft and sponginess. All right, but do not worry, it is well floating above ground. You can see from image here that you still have about I think about half a meter or more above the water surface. So let's go for our excitement tour of these Euro floating islands. So the location of this Euro floating island is on the location color in the blue circle, right? And it fall under the Peruvian section of the Lake Titicaca. And Lake Titicaca have an altitude of 3810 meter as shown in this signboard. So as I always mention and also caution the visitor, you must get yourself acclimatized before you come to this area. So we are walking toward the jetty point where we take our boat rides. It's not a very big boat, but enough to accommodate 20 or 20 of us, more than 20 of us. And this is actually the size of the boat that we are taking. And this is some of we saw a drag line that's nearby. Probably this is used to deepen the lakes. So a lot of boats were parked there. As I said, that this is actually a lake resort for the local, and probably our visit is not during the peak season, so you can see a lot of anchor boats around the jetty regions, full of them. And this is one of the passing by boats that ferrying the visitor to these floating islands of Euros. More of the surrounding view, and we are further away now from the Puno city, from far. And this so-called superhighway, where we are heading to this Euro island, floating islands, there's a toll gate. Actually, this lady is actually collecting entry toll from us. I'm sorry for the lightning sound. It's about to rain. And every boat that passing by have to contribute to preserving this natural reserve area. So you can see that the more of these small little huts that are built on these floating reeds islands and the Euro traps. This is actually the reeds that has been cultivated and preserved and grow in this region abundantly. Is where they rely on this to build the floating islands. So this is more of the views as you're getting closer to the Euro traps place of residence. Here we are. The floating island is just not far away from us, and you can see even there's a viewing tower built for the purpose of the visitor. This Euro floating island become very popular spot, tourist spot for those people touring Peru. Excuse me. And you can see there's a boats. Excuse me again. So now a closer view. Now because there's no infrastructures such as electricity and water, so the resident will rely very much on the lake water for drinking, as well as the solar panel to produce the energy, the electricity for the power of the lighting. So this is the view near to when we are on the floated islands. Of course, you can see some of these are not, the hut are not completely constructed of the reeds, but some using some artificial materials. Like in this case, I think probably is the coagulated zinc sheet. So this is the model of the day with the background. You can see this boat were very, very unique. He have created a special, doesn't seem like a dragon head, but I'm not sure what it symbolizes, what animals. And it's not easy to paddle these reed boats. It's very, very heavy, and as such that actually a person or two may not able to move it, particularly when it's loaded. So you can see this lady is on the small little boats. In fact, this is the resident of the Europe people. There's a way for them to commute between the inland and also the floating islands. These are the huts they built. And interestingly, when there are so many islands, about 20 of them, and lived by about 2,000 inhabitants. And those inhabitants, when they can click on those, then click or relative of, they will then stay together. So you can see that each island itself could be a family groups. And we are actually on these islands, and you can see there are some freshly harvested reeds that was placed green in color, was placed on one corner of these floating islands. And this image of Euro tribes harvesting the reed from the lakes. And on the way back to their islands. And let me explain how this island was built. And you can see at the bottom section of this image, the brownish color at the bottom of this demonstration by the Euro tribe to us, it's actually those roots of this reed that actually the anchor to the base of the lakes, right? And they dug in about half a meter deep to collect this portion of the reeds. Actually, it's the root of the reeds that anchor closely to the clay. The base of the layer are mainly all clay. So they cut the clay blocks, right, piece by piece, and because of that, the clay is holding this reed, the root, and holding it together. It becomes a floating box, and then they harvest this block and place it as a lower section, lower layer of their floating islands, right? Because this will then tie these floating blocks together, so that the island will not disintegrate, because the earth and the roots that intervene to intervene to one another, it can hold it in a firm single piece, right, and stay afloat. And then on top of that, then is where they place these reeds, and they place it in a perpendicular manner. First layer is on this direction, the next layer will be perpendicular to it, and many layers one after the others. Make it enough thickness so that it ensures that the whole platform is well above the water level of at least about half a meter. So as these reeds decompose and decay, it was slowly sinking, right? Then they will top it up. They keep topping up in a similar manner, so that to maintain this island is remain afloat. And important thing is that this island normally does not last longer than 2 years. Most of the time after a year or a plus, a year and a half, that they had the need to build new floating islands and discarded the old island. Of course, when they discarded, probably they will destroy it and remove it, because that as long as they found that this floating island can no longer able to stay afloat, they have to abandon it. So these are some of the local tribe, family that we are visiting on these islands. These small little kids. We found very cute little kid, and the mother is playing with her kid. Right? And you can see this reed at the bottommost of the reed, just before the root portion, they actually can be consumed. And it's where there is also the source of food for them, and also a source of water for them, because in this lower portion of it, they have a lot of water content. It's very, very high. And they also rely on the living on the tourism, and therefore they also do some handicraft for sale to the tourist or visitor. So these are the Euro people in these floating islands. So every family, the moment we visit, they'll take out all their handicraft for sales to the tourists. And the kid was playing around. And of course, they also built a viewing platform for us to have a better view of this floating island in these regions. And when we are about ending our tour, we are riding on these reed boats. We say goodbye and sayonara to them. The whole family, the few family in each island, they all gather to sing a song to send it off and wishing us all the best in our following on journey. So this is actually the end of these episodes, and I'm glad that you are still with me, and I hope that you will stay tuned further for my episode number 6 of my journey to Peru. And please do help to support this travel channel by subscribe, like, and share to a friend and family, so that they can be like you, enjoy the virtual tour of the world at the comfort of their home. So Chris Lee here, wishing you all the best, stay strong and stay safe, and see you in the coming weeks. And thank you for with me until this hour. Thank you again. Good night.